Well, hello everyone, this is Mohammad Badruddin. Welcome back, and today we are going to cover lab number 5 from SQL injection vulnerability. This is server side vulnerability, and I'm covering this lab from Web Security Academy from Portswigger. I highly recommend you guys, if you are preparing for web application penetration testing, you should go for these labs. Before going to the lab, this warning and disclaimer as always for you. This video and its contents are only for educational and awareness purpose, and I do not support any unethical or illegal act. So that's been said, let's go and we will see what we are going to solve today. So up to now we actually tested how many number of columns returned by the database through the SQL query from the application, right? Then we find out the data type of those columns returned by the database. And in this lab, now we know that how many number of columns are there and what kind of data types. So now we can go and exfiltrate the data which a normal user cannot actually query from the database. So the lab is SQL injection union attack retrieving data from other tables, right? Okay, fine. So the agenda is like, this lab contains an SQL injection vulnerability in the product category filter. The results from the query are returned in the application's response, so you can use a union attack to retrieve data from other tables. Perfect. So to construct such an attack, you need to combine some of the techniques you learned in the previous labs, which means lab number 3 and lab number 4, where you identify how many number of columns returned by the database through the application and the data type of those columns. So the database contains a different tables called user with columns called username and password. Fine. So to solve the lab, perform an SQL injection union attack that retrieves all usernames and password and use the information to log in as the administrator user. So in this lab, actually in the database there is a table called users, and in this table there are two columns named as username and password. So what we need to do, we need to find out all the usernames and passwords, then we will get the password for the administrator, and then we have to log in from the administrator account. Fine. So here I took an example, like the table is users and these are the columns or rows in the database. Fine. So according to the lab, what we need to do is we need to actually execute this kind of query. So select username comma password from username from table users. This is gonna be our query. So let's go to the lab and we will try to solve it. So the lab is saying there is SQL injection vulnerability in the category filter. So first of all, you need to choose one category such as food and drink, or you can choose another category like accessories. Now the first and foremost thing, you have to test the application, whether that application or that functionality, specific functionality or feature is vulnerable to SQL injection or not. So for this, this is the very basic format. So I will just put a single quote and hit enter. So as expected, because we already know that the application or this functionality, category filter functionality, is vulnerable to SQL injection. So it will give us an internal server error because the query syntax is wrong because of this single quote. To form a structure so that we can execute our query, we need to put something like this. Okay, so we will put single quote and then we will put two comments as we did in the previous lab, and this time, as you can see, we don't get any error. So what actually this query is doing, it's saying select prod underscore name, comma, it could be prod underscore description from products table, where category is gonna be equal to, let's say, pets or accessories or anything. So what we did is, and here that query actually terminates, but once we put single quote, that means this is gonna be the syntax error, and then if we put to dash, that means we are going to comment this, the query will execute up to this only. Fine. So now what we are going to do, because we are exploiting SQL injection vulnerability with the union attack, so we first of all we need to find out how many columns returned by this query. So we can actually get the idea from this result, because as you can see here, this is the product name and this is the description of the product. Again, this is the product name and this is the product description. So that means the query executed by this application to the database. So database is actually returning two columns. One is product name and another one is product description. So that same thing I did it here, but as you can see here, this query is regarding products table, because we are fetching the data or calling the data from the product table, but we need to get data from the users table. Once you want to execute two different select queries in a single query, at that instant union comes into the picture. So now what we are going to do, copy this and I'm gonna paste it here. So what I will say is union select username comma password from users table, right? So this is going to give us the username and password with a product name and description also. But first of all, we need to find out how many columns are there. Union select null. So if we hit enter, we will find internal server error, because there are more than one columns, right? So comma, let's put another null, hit enter, and as you can see, this time we get the expected result. That means there are two valid columns returned by the database. Now we need to find out type of data or data type. Paste, and here we put union select null comma null, right? Okay, to identify whether this first column is a string data type or not, so I'm gonna put a, hit enter. If that data type is a string, we will not get any error, and here we will not get any error. So that means the first column is returning data type string, and as you can see, whatever string we put here, we can see that string here. Now let's try another column. Let's see its data type. So I'm gonna put BBBB, hit enter, and as you can see here, this AAAA is in the place of product name and BBBB is in the place of product description. That means both of these columns have string data type, right? We can now execute our query. Now I'm gonna tell you a very important thing, which is why we need to identify the data type, because username table, username field is gonna be the string. Normally it's a string. Why? Because username is gonna be, let's say, Andy, or it could be Badr, or it could be admin or administrator. So all these are strings. Also, password field is also a string. It could be alphanumeric or it could be numeric, but you can put numeric password as a string. So it is also a string, like I can say PASSW0 RD, like this. I can say 1 2 3 4 5 6 ASDF. Fine. So this could be alphanumeric, or anyone can put only numeric value, but this value we can also take as a string. Fine. It means once we put here, instead of AAA, once we put here username, and in the second column we put password, that means it is going to return us a string value. But if here the data type, in case if there is data type integer, so you will not get the answer as the string, right? So data type must be same. Hope you understand that. Even if you have any query, you can put your query in this comment section, and I will try to respond as soon as possible. So select select username comma password from users table. It's users or user, I need to check it out here. Users, right? Okay, so hit enter, and now here you can see this is the username, this is the password, and both are strings value. Username, password. So in that way you can understand how much harm it could have if your application, or if any application, is vulnerable to SQL injection, because most important asset of any organization is information, and in that way if your confidentiality got compromised, then there is nothing to be left, right? So to solve the lab, we need to copy, actually I am going to copy both of these. Come here, paste that here. So go back, my account, username is gonna be administrator, and the password is gonna be this. So I'm going to copy this, come back here and just paste that value, login, and lab is solved. That's it for this video. If you like the content, please like, subscribe and share. And if you have any query, please put your query in the comment section. See you in the next video. Bye.